Hello you guys out there, my name's Guitar and behind me is a Yamaha DX7 I got for $100. It's not working right now, and in this video we're gonna see if I can get it working again. The Yamaha DX7 is an FM synthesizer that came out in 1983. It's known for bringing FM synthesis to the masses, coming in at just under $2,000. That's still over $6,000 in today's money. And it's most famous for its E-piano 1 sound heard in songs like Sacrifice by Elton John or many city pop songs, which is why I've always wanted one. However, these range from about $300 to $600, and if it's in mint condition, it can also be over $1,000. And I should say that if you just want the DX7 for its sound, then don't even bother. There's a plugin called DX which emulates it one-to-one. You can't even hear any difference at all. With that said, I had a look around Craigslist and found a DX7 for $220, which I thought, well, that's quite cheap, let's just message the seller. And to my surprise, he said, I don't really know a lot about these things, you can have it for $100. And I was like, all right, when can I come get it? When I arrived, it turned out that the DX7 wasn't turning on initially, because the seller had decided to turn the voltage selector from 120 to 240 volts for the EU. And as he said, he heard a slight hum and the DX7 turned off. And I don't know a lot about electronics, but I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to turn that voltage selector over while it's on. At that low price point though, I thought it's worth the risk. 80s electronics are usually pretty easy to fix. Doesn't mean it's easy for me, who is not an electronics engineer at all. And if you're an electronics engineer, this video might cause you severe headaches, not because anything in here is difficult, just because I'm a total noob when it comes to these things, so be warned. And on top of that, the deal even included a keyboard stand, which is worth probably $5 to $10 on its own. So I brought the DX7 home, removed the 5 screws, and had a look inside. And from what I could see, right where the power supply was, there was a small little fuse. You know, these glass tube things with a wire in them. And I wasn't so sure at first, but when I compared it to the other fuses inside the DX7, it was pretty clear that this fuse was blown. So I went to the electronics store around the corner, bought a matching fuse, inserted it in there, and the DX7 really did turn on. It was that easy. However, it turned out that the patches inside the DX7 were just full of gibberish. Not to say the gibberish didn't sound really interesting, but not very useful at all. And this can be due to the CMOS battery being dead, because the RAM inside the DX7 actually needs a constant power supply in order to keep its memory. The problem with DX7s is that they come with this tiny little proprietary modified CR2032 battery, which can't be removed that easily from its holder. And I checked with the DX7's internal battery meter that this thing was dead. And as far as I can see, it's probably already building up a little cushion, if these little batteries even do that. Like I said, I don't even know a lot about electronics, but it doesn't seem very healthy to me. So I ordered a CR2032 battery holder online and also got some soldering gear. Okay, so back at HQ and this MIDI interface, which I didn't have before, obviously, and this tiny little CR2032 battery holder just arrived. At the moment there's only gibberish coming from the DX7 in any patch you select, and as far as I found out, that's probably because the CMOS battery on the DX7 is dead. If we use the internal voltage checker, it only says 2.7 volt and it's supposed to be 3 volts. And that's obviously too low. But back in the day, electronics like a keyboard weren't as smart as this, so right now it only outputs gibberish and whatever the RAM gives it. It's kind of interesting, but it's not really any useful. Only some patches even put out sound at all, and even less patches put out actual notes. Some just sound like some digital sound effects that are supposed to sound like bugs or something. Some of them do have pretty good bass though, but really annoying treble, so it's not really any use at the moment. Even though it does kind of sound as if someone was playing around with a modular synthesizer. It's kind of interesting, but not what we want. So before we get to soldering this to the main board, I need to try and flash the patches back to the DX7 with this MIDI interface. Obviously USB didn't exist back in the 80s, and originally the DX7 was supposed to use cartridges like old game consoles. These cartridges though were always proprietary, and Yamaha probably knew they couldn't always maintain such a proprietary standard. So they made the DX7 one of the first devices to ever support MIDI. The problem with that is just that mine is a very early model. It's got the serial number 20300, which is quite cool. But the early ones didn't fully implement the MIDI standard, so I'm hoping this one does, and if not, I'm hoping that flashing the patches to the chip will still work. So let's open SysX Librarian and hope that the DX7 will still work if we can flash the patches back to it. Okay, so we're on the MacBook right now in SysX Librarian, which is free software and only available for Mac, though there are options for Windows and Linux. So we're gonna select our MIDI interface, which is this one. We're gonna make sure it's plugged into the DX7's input. And then we're gonna select a file, a 6 file. I'm gonna be using this one, and I'm gonna put a link to this one in the description. So next up, we're gonna walk over to our DX7, turn it on with a nice and hefty click. We're gonna press the function button, and now we can select the MIDI channel. We wanna make sure it's 1. You can always change it with these buttons or with the data entry slider, which is missing in our case. Then we're gonna press 8, toggle through this with the button 8. And when it says sysinfo unavailable, we can just press yes to send a 1, probably. We can toggle through this with 8 again, memory protect internal, and we're gonna make sure that says off. Once again, we're pressing no. Then we're gonna walk over to our MacBook and press play right here. Sending message, and it should say MIDI received. So now, let's see what we have here. Memory select internal. Oh, look at that, brass 1, brass 2, and this button here should be our famous E-piano 1. Okay, I'm excited! Okay, it's working now. I just have to crank the gain all the way up for some reason. And as you can hear, there's a very distinctive hum in the background, and I'm not sure if that's supposed to be there. Here we go. That's what a DX7 sounds like. Thank you very much. Okay, now I'm just kidding. We got a signal. Is this supposed to be a piano? Sounds more like an electric guitar. Okay, now here's 11. This is E-piano 1. Oh, wait a minute. There's some like portamento on here. Well, we're almost there. We're getting sound out of it, and it sounds pretty much like it's supposed to, but not quite, so let's see what we can do about that. The workaround I've been using was to just use the headphone output, since that's way louder than line level, obviously. Not the best solution, but for someone who doesn't know a lot about electronics. So with that fixed, I got to soldering. For this, I needed to unscrew the main board, unplug all the different cables, and don't worry, all the cables near each other are different sizes, so you won't get them mixed up. And I gotta say, that's a pretty user-friendly design from Yamaha. Not gonna lie, Apple could learn a lot from them. And I'm saying that as an Apple fanboy. So after I took out the main board, I got to soldering. So I got this cheap soldering iron. It's gonna be enough for the job, hopefully. Also, I got a desoldering pump. Some prefer desoldering braid, I prefer a desoldering pump. So we can chop up the remaining bits of wire. So this little piece, I hope it didn't hit the lens. This big one right here is the negative side of the battery. Maybe I can just pull it out like that. Oh man, I'm so bad at this. Please do not try this at home if you're this bad at soldering. See, somehow it's still not coming loose. Okay, breaking news, this end has come loose, and now we just need to do the same with this end. Okay, this just got really hot. One end has come loose though. Should have just used braid. Oh, I'm gonna regret this. I might just cut that off, but not with these pliers. Yes! Just fell down. Perfect. Now let's suck up the rest of the remaining solder, however you want to call it. That seems pretty good. Okay, so I already just soldered in the minus pole of the battery holder. That was pretty easy since there was solder left in the hole, so one good thing about this whole thing. Okay, so I was right about this being the plus pole. So let's take our soldering iron. And there we go. Haha, that was easy. The board looks hideous now, but I mean, if it works, it works. It does mean though that I'm gonna need to flash this whole thing again since the RAM will now be empty. And we're gonna stick this somewhere into the DX7. When I was finally done with my hilariously bad soldering, I put a piece of double-sided tape on the back of the battery holder and stuck it to the case. This way it's just way easier swapping out the battery in the future. And after that came the shock. The DX7 suddenly wouldn't spit out any more sound. So I opened it back up again to see if I had destroyed anything in the process of soldering, which I thought was very unlikely, but it could have still happened, right? I unplugged some of the cables, checked which one was probably for which function, without any success. And then I decided, okay, let's Google. And then I saw that there was another board on there, which I didn't see on any other Google pictures. And it turned out to be from Jan Elektronik, which is not Yamaha. And it turns out that this is a little expansion unit that quadruples your RAM, allowing you to store a total of 128 patches on the Yamaha DX7, which is pretty cool. If you're even more lucky, you might be able to find a DX7 with an expansion unit called which gives you 10 times the RAM for a total of 320 patches. You're not gonna need more cartridges than that. As it turns out, the so-called JME SPX1 also gives the Yamaha DX7 some additional functions, like setting key limits, meaning that you can only play keys from, let's say, C1 to C4, and all the other keys get disabled. Well, it turns out that that got overwritten in the process of flashing the DX7's memory, and therefore both key limits, the upper and the lower limit, were set to the lowest key. So it's pretty clear that if all the keys are disabled, there can't be any sound coming out of the DX7. So after I turned the upper key limit all the way up again and set another function to function disable, probably, I don't know why it's called that, but that enables saving the settings you just created. People were probably still figuring out user interfaces back then in the 80s. And I was only able to fix this because of a Dutch manual for the SPX1 I found on the Internet Archive. If that ever goes down, message me, I got it. And I don't even speak Dutch, but as someone who speaks German and English, it's not too hard to understand. I didn't need any of the additional functions anyway, because I just wanted a working DX7. And the 4 different memory banks still work without any other functions enabled. And after I checked the battery voltage, I finally had a working DX7. Well, not completely, because I still think the output has an issue, but it's in a state where I can call it good enough and mostly fixed. Let's hear it. And that's the DX7. As you can see, I'm not a pianist. I can't play a lot of songs on piano, but I really enjoy the sounds of the Yamaha DX7, and I think it was worth it. However, if you just want it for the sound, don't bother. Dex is a free plugin which works with pretty much every DAW. And I think I even know how to pull off a scientific comparison, since this thing supports MIDI and therefore can act as a MIDI controller. As you might also have noticed, I could just about pull this off with my knowledge, with my very limited knowledge about electronics. So it's probably best if you don't try this at home. Although, if you know something about electronics, then it might be worth a shot. And after all, 80s electronics just weren't as complicated as electronics are today. If you got any questions about the DX7, feel free to toss them into the comments down below, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. I've had quite a few outfit changes throughout this video, so you can see it took a long time to make it. So I'd appreciate if you subscribe to this channel so you can see more of this awesome content. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out!